A Storm at Hastings, and the Little Unknown. By Thomas Hood. 'Twas August. Hastings every day was filling. Hastings, that greenest spot on memory's waste, with crowds of idlers willing and unwilling to be bedipped, be noticed, or be braced, and all things rose a penny and a shilling. Meanwhile, from window, and from door, in haste, accommodation bills kept coming down, gladding the world of letters in that town. Each day poured in new coachfuls of new cits, flying from London smoke and dust annoying, unmarried misses hoping to make hits, and new-wed couples fresh from Tunbridge toying, Lacemen and placemen, ministers and wits, and Quakers of both sexes, much enjoying a morning's reading by the ocean's rim, that sect delighting in the sea's broad brim. And lo, amongst all these appeared a creature, so small, he almost might a twin have been with Miss Cratchami, dwarfish quite in stature, yet well proportioned, neither fat nor lean, his face of marvelously pleasant feature, so short and sweet a man was never seen. All thought him charming at the first beginning. Alas, ere long they found him far too winning. He seemed in love with chance, and chance repaid his ardent passion with her fondest smile. The sunshine of good luck, without a shade, he staked and won and staked. The bile it stirred of many a man and many a maid, to see at every venture how that vile small gambler snatched, and how he won them too, a living Pam, omnipotent at loo. Miss Wiggins set her heart upon a box, 'twas handsome rosewood, and inlaid with brass, and dreamt 3 times she garnished it with stocks of needles, silks, and cottons, but, alas, she lost it wide awake. We thought Miss Cox was lucky, but she saw 3 caddies pass to that small imp. No living luck could loo him. Sir Stamford would have lost his raffles to him. And so he climbed, and rode, and won, and walked, the wondrous topic of the curious swarm that haunted the parade. Many were balked of notoriety by that small form pacing it up and down. Some even talked of ducking him, when lo, a dismal storm stopped in, one Friday, at the close of day, and every head was turned another way, watching the grander guest. It seemed to rise bulky and slow upon the southern brink of the horizon, fanned by sultry sighs, so black and threatening, I cannot think of any simile, except the skies Miss Wiggins sometimes shades in Indian ink. Misshapen blotches of such heavy vapor, they seem a deal more solid than her paper. As for the sea, it did not fret, and rave, and tear its waves to tatters, and so dash on the stony-hearted beach. Some bards would have it always rampant, in that idle fashion, whereas the waves rolled in, subdued and grave, like schoolboys, when the masters in a passion, who meekly settle in and take their places, with a very quiet awe on all their faces. Some love to draw the ocean with a head, like troubled table beer, and make it bounce, and froth, and roar, and fling. But this, I've said, surged in scarce rougher than a lady's flounce. But then, a grander contrast thus it bred with a wild welkin, seeming to pronounce something more awful in the serious ear, as one would whisper that a lion's near, who just begins to roar. So the hoarse thunder growled long, but low, a prelude note of death, as if the stifling clouds yet kept it under, but still it muttered to the sea beneath such a continued peal, as made us wonder it did not pause more oft to take its breath, whilst we were panting with the sultry weather, and hardly cared to wed 2 words together, but watched the surly advent of the storm, much as the brown-cheeked planters of Barbados must watch a rising of the Negro swarm. Meantime it steered, like Odin's old armadas, right on our coast, a dismal, coal-black form. Many proud gates were quelled, and all bravadoes of folly ceased, and sundry idle jokers went home to cover up their tongs and pokers. So fierce the lightning flashed. In all their days the oldest smugglers had not seen such flashing, and they are used to many a pretty blaze, to keep their Hollands from an awkward clashing with hostile cutters in our creeks and bays, and truly one could think, without much lashing the fancy, that those coasting clouds, so awful and black, were fraught with spirits as unlawful The gay parade grew thin. All the fair crowd vanished, as if they knew their own attractions, for now the lightning through a near hand cloud began to make some very crooked fractions. Only some few remained that were not cowed, a few rough sailors, who had been in actions, and sundry boatmen, that with quick yeos, lest it should blow, were pulling up the rows. No flower, but a boat. Some more were hauling the Regent by the head. Another crew with that same cry peculiar to their calling were heaving up the Hope, and as they knew the very gods themselves oft get a mauling in their own realms, the seamen wisely drew the Neptune rather higher on the beach, that he might lie beyond his billows' reach. And now the storm, with its despotic power, had all usurped the azure of the skies, making our daylight darker by an hour, and some few drops, of an unusual size, few and distinct, scarce 20 to the shower, fell like huge teardrops from a giant's eyes. But then this sprinkle thickened in a trice and rained much harder, in good solid ice. Oh, for a very storm of words to show how this fierce crash of hail came rushing o'er us. Handel would make the gusty organs blow grandly, and a rich storm in music score us. But even his music seemed composed and low, when we were handled by this hailstone chorus, whilst thunder rumbled, with its awful sound, and frozen comfits rolled along the ground, as big as bullets. Lord, how they did batter our crazy tiles! And now the lightning flashed alternate with the dark, until the latter was rarest of the two. The gust too dashed so terribly, I thought the hail must shatter some panes, and so it did, and first it smashed the very square where I had chose my station to watch the general illumination. Another, and another, still came in, and fell in jingling ruin at my feet, making transparent holes. That let me win some samples of the storm. Oh, it was sweet to think I had a shelter for my skin, culling them through these loopholes of retreat, which in a little we began to glaze, chiefly with a jacktowel and some baize. But which, the cloud had passed o'erhead, but played its crooked fires in constant flashes still, just in our rear. As though it had arrayed its heavy batteries at Fairlight Mill, so that it lit the town, and grandly made the rugged features of the Castle Hill leap, like a birth, from chaos into light, and then relapse into the gloomy night, as parcel of the cloud. The clouds themselves, like monstrous crags and summits everlasting, piled each on each in most gigantic shelves, that Milton's devils were engaged in blasting. We could e'en fancy Satan and his elves busy upon those crags, and ever casting huge fragments loose, and that we felt the sound they made in falling to the startled ground. And so the tempest scowled away, and soon timidly shining through its skirts of jet, we saw the rim of the Pacific moon, like a bright fish entangled in a net, flashing its silver sides. How sweet a boon seemed her sweet light, as though it would beget, with that fair smile, a calm upon the seas, peace in the sky, and coolness in the breeze. Meantime the hail had ceased, and all the brood of glazers stole abroad to count their gains. At every window there were maids who stood lamenting o'er the glass's small remains, or with coarse linens made the fractions good, staunching the wind in all the wounded panes, or, holding candles to the panes, in doubt the wind resolved, blowing the candles out. No house was whole that had a southern front, no greenhouse but the same mishap befell. Bow windows and bell glasses bore the brunt, no sex in glass was spared. For those who dwell on each hillside, you might have swum a punt in any of their parlors. Mrs. Snell was slopped out of her seat, and Mr. Hitchin had a flower garden washed into a kitchen. But still the sea was mild, and quite disclaimed the recent violence. Each after each the gentle waves a gentle murmur framed, tapping, like woodpeckers, the hollow beach. Howbeit his weather eye the seaman aimed across the calm, and hinted by his speech a gale next morning. And when morning broke, there was a gale, quite equal to bespoke. Before high water, it were better far to christen it not water then, but waiter, for then the tide is serving at the bar. Rose such a swell, I never saw one greater. Black, jagged billows rearing up in war like ragged roaring bears against the baiter, with lots of froth upon the shingle shed, like stout poured out with a fine beachy head. No open boat was open to a fair, or launched that morn on 7 shilling trips. No bathing woman waded, none would dare a dipping in the wave, but waved their dips. No seagull ventured on the stormy air, and all the dreary coast was clear of ships. For 2 leagues shores upon the river Lee are not so perilous as one at sea. Awe-struck we sat, and gazed upon the scene before us in such horrid hurly-burly, a boiling ocean of mixed black and green, a sky of copper color, grim and surly, when lo, in that vast hollow scooped between 2 rolling alps of water, white and curly, we saw a pair of little arms a-skimming, much like a first or last attempt at swimming. Sometimes a hand, sometimes a little shoe, sometime a skirt. Sometimes a hank of hair just like a dabbled seaweed rose to view, sometimes a knee, sometimes a back was bare. At last a frightful somerset he threw right on the shingles. Anyone could swear the lad was dead, without a chance of perjury, and battered by the surge beyond all surgery. However, we snatched up the corse thus thrown, intending, Christian-like, to sod and turf it, and after venting pity's sigh and groan, then curiosity began with her fit, and lo! The features of the small unknown. 'Twas he that of the surf had this surfeit, and in his fob, the cause of late monopolies, we found a contract signed with Mephistopheles. A bond of blood, whereby the sinner gave his forfeit soul to Satan in reversion, providing in this world he was to have a lordship over luck, by whose exertion he might control the course of cards and brave all throws of dice. But on a sea excursion the juggling demon, in his usual vein, seized the last cast, and nicked him in the main.